There's a growing proposal in Washington to cap Social Security benefits at $50,000 a year for individuals. And it's starting to raise some questions. Is it fair? Is it sustainable? And what does it mean for the future of the program? Well, that's exactly what we're digging into with our host, Stephen Sabo. Stephen is a financial advisor with Executive Financial Group. You can learn more at executivefinancialgroup.com. Stephen, have you heard this proposal? It's starting to get a little buzz, a little traction.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, here we go again with the Social Security proposals. Yeah, I have heard a little bit about it. We'll see what happens. I know that there's, our government always likes to throw out a proposal instead of actually do their job to try and fix what's causing it. But yes, right. I have heard a little bit about it, and we're certainly going to talk about it today. So
I feel like this proposal is like a dangle the carrot or, wave the flyer over here so that everybody's attention goes that way for a few minutes and maybe gives them a little break.
Yeah.
But it's not really a big solution. They say that even if this proposal were enacted, it would only extend the Social Security program by 7 years. So we're not talking any sort of long-term solution, but
that's right.
People that are proponents of it say it's at least a temporary fix. As we all know, this has been a problem that we knew was coming.
Sure.
The government's kicked the can. We're running out of road to keep kicking the can.
Yes.
We're talking as early as 2032 now. That's 6 years from now that we could be facing a problem with, people not at least receiving 100% of their benefits. But let's just, for, the sake of the moment, dive into the proposal for a few minutes and see what would that mean for the average person? Does it affect the average person? Would it derail other people's plans? What are your thoughts?
So, I mean, obviously, whenever you have any sort of proposal like this, there's going to be effects to somebody, right? And who's it going to affect? And do those people that are affected, is it better for the whole that we do these things? And so, on this proposal specifically, I know that it talks about capping the benefits at $50,000 per individual. I'm trying to think through clients. I can't say that we have any single or two married couples that are coming close to the 100,000. And even people that had good jobs and, that are getting a lot, we don't see a lot of people reaching that $50,000 mark. And so, you think to yourself, well, is that going to affect day-to-day things? Most people, for your average consumer that's coming through the door, it probably wouldn't affect that. But could it have effects down the road? Sure. I mean, typically what you see is if somebody has reached the point where they're getting $50,000 in Social Security benefits for themselves, they've probably done well, and they're probably the type of person that has saved some money outside, through work plans, through whatever, to where Social Security isn't the only thing that they're relying on. And so that's not to say that it couldn't be that, but typically, if you have somebody that has been earning, say, $250,000 a year for 20 or 30 years, if they're coming into retirement relying solely on Social Security, then, I don't know what was going on. We don't see a whole lot of people that are going to be, being capped at 50. Now, I know that they do raises and things like that, the COLA, the expense raises. Yeah. And so, there eventually, yes, it could affect people that if those cost of living raises, adjustments are going up so much that, people on the higher end of Social Security that we see could eventually get there, then yes, I mean, it could absolutely affect them. But, for most of the people that we encounter, they're not coming close to that. For most couples and things like that, we might see that they're getting 60 or 70,000 at the most in Social Security. And that's a pretty high, and it just depends on when you take it. I say that we have a lot of people that take it when they're younger, and that's part of by design on how we do things, right? We want to look at, all kinds of different stuff, the longevity of the person, how long they're going to last, what you give up, say between if you were going to take it at 67 and you took it at 62, well, what do you give up between those years? And how long would it take to make it break even? If you're in your 80s, mid 80s, well, I'd say, hey, if you can retire early and take your Social Security at 62, do it. Sure. Because what we find is whenever you're older, you're spending less money. But it just depends on how much you have saved, your longevity. There's all of those different things. And so as far as the proposal itself, it's not one of those things where, this is like I've got to drop everything that I'm doing here in my business and reach out to all my clients because they're going to be affected. No, but I think that, there's some of the things that we are going to talk about in here are, could that lead to other problems, right? The capping of things. Our government does a great job at telling you one thing and then applying those rules liberally. And so it starts to creep into other territory, if you will, with that. So that's kind of how, I see it. Again, it's not we don't see that $50,000 per individual quite often.
Well, and I think that's pretty average, not just in your office, because the average retired worker is only getting just under $2,000 a month, or about $23,700 a year. So to your point, that's not even close to the $50,000 cap. So you're talking more to the Oprahs of the world who would claim the highest level of Social Security at $5,000 a month. And obviously anybody who knows her story knows that she's financially comfortable. So being capped on what she could pull for Social Security would not directly affect her ability to maintain the lifestyle that she's currently living.
Right.
But the idea of there needing to be a proposal in the first place comes more with the larger issue of Social Security is becoming increasingly a big unknown for retirement versus the standard, something we can count on, steady, chug along wheel that it has been. We are now facing insolvency in 2032. Again, only 6 years from now. So people that are on the cusp or those already receiving Social Security have to be wondering, what will it mean for them? And one of the other proposals is a talk of a 28% cut across the board. Now that I feel would drastically affect the average person coming into your office. How are you addressing the Social Security conversation given that we don't know what will be done?
One of the things that we do whenever we, address Social Security with our clients is, we have to, we have to have honest conversations with them about everything. And so, I think a lot of people, for the most part, it's one of those things where you don't want to get ahead of yourself and create chaos when it's not necessary. We want to be able to handle it so that we aren't reacting from a place of like, oh my gosh, this has happened and now it's too late to fix.
Sure.
But we also don't want to get people fired up about like, hey, your Social Security is going to be cut and we need to do something drastic here. So everybody's going to be a little bit different in how we approach that. We have some clients who, their bills aren't that much. They're pretty simple people. And they don't need much more than their Social Security, which I sounds crazy because of the cost of living these days is just out of control. But some people we do have that are like that. They live simply. They don't spend a lot of money. They get enjoyment from, being at their house and keeping up and just, being with family, and they don't have a lot of bills. And so for somebody like that, I'm going to say, hey, look, you probably could care less what I have to say about Social Security anyway. You're just vibing and living.
Right.
For other people where it's, hey, this is a big thing. And if it gets cut, we're going to have to take more. Am I going to have to go back to work? And, what's going to happen here? Well, we're going to sit down and, run through our scenarios. I mean, back whenever, we've started with people, we've created a written plan that says, you're going to get X from Social Security. We're going to create this much in income. You're going to have this much from RMDs. You're going to, whatever the case is. And so we've created a plan. So now we can go back and adjust that plan accordingly. And we look at their income source. So if, let's say, for instance, it is going to be cut. and your Social Security is going to be lower, and we're going to have to pull more money from your investments. Hey, okay, that's fine. We'll figure it out, but we got to sit down and have a conversation about it. Again, and I'm not magic, but we've done enough in your plan. I feel confident that we've done enough to allow for some things like that. Obviously, if it's a big unforeseen number and all of a sudden you're faced with this, maybe we have to cut back on how much we're spending, right? Mm-hmm. Or, picking up a part-time job might be something that we have to discuss now. And I know that those are things that people don't want to hear. And hey, life is full of stuff that you don't want to hear, but you have to deal with. And so, we'll kind of take it as it goes and make sure that, whatever we do, that you're going to be okay in your plan. And so again, we like to build flexibility into our plans, because if we know anything, we know that things in your life will change. Mm-hmm. And so can you plan that the government's going to come along and take away the social safety net that they've promised everybody that you've paid into for all these years? We don't know. And I think that as a society, I think that there's going to be a lot of backlash and pushback if they, came out and said, well, hey, we're just going to cut everyone's Social Security. I think there's enough people in the country that are going to go, wait a minute. You guys have given yourselves in Congress raises all these years without batting an eye.
Right.
Maybe we stop and we have to have a national conversation that says, we got to get it together, people. We're all on this same, big spinning rock, and we got to live with each other. Let's figure this out. I know everybody wants to, be comfortable and have certain things in their lives, but, we got to figure it out, what's right and what's fair for people. And so, again, having the conversations with our clients, it really is just dependent on the client and who they are and what they've done. Some clients we're going to have tougher conversations, right? Mm-hmm. Because maybe they have just enough money to live comfortably and last them throughout their retirement. But, something like this could derail it. And so maybe we have that conversation. We say, hey, look, here are your options, right? We're going to lay out the different options, and then you get to pick and choose. Maybe you have to cut back how much you're spending. Maybe you need to pick up a part-time job. Whatever the tweak is going to be, we'll have those conversations and we'll work through it with people. But, we've built in flexibility in our plans that if we need to take a little bit more, then we can, right? And so I don't think it's anything to get everybody all worked up about, but it's something to keep an eye on.
Are there things that you would encourage retirees to be considering, or at least having conversations about now, while Social Security is still doing its thing, at least for the next 6 years, nothing is going to change? Are there conversations that retirees should be taking to their advisors and saying, I need to know about blank?
Yeah, I think part of it is just checking in with them more often. And, we've had conversations in the past, you and I, about there isn't some sort of a golden, number that you need to have or anything like that. But I would certainly have a conversation with your advisor about, am I saving enough? Am I putting enough away? Because at the end of the day, all I'm doing, I'm here to put all the puzzle pieces together. You're doing the hard lifting, the hard job of saving the money. And so it needs to happen, right? And, so sometimes we're going to have the conversations about maybe you need to start bumping up how much you're putting into these work plans, right? Or if you've maxed those out, all right, let's look at options outside of there. That can't be the only thing. And so, sitting down and just kind of checking in with people and making sure that they are staying on track, and running with the plan that we've given them. Because again, it's so hard to predict what's going to happen in 30 years. And I know it sounds like, oh, Stephen, this is a cop out. Put more money away. Of course. Well, we'd all love to. That's as simple as it is. That's life. You have to make choices on if we are afraid that Social Security isn't going to be there. Again, we're left with a few choices. Put more money away, work longer, or hit the lottery. And So, I think that just, making sure that you're not overspending, that you aren't, not saving enough, doing those types of things. I think that goes a long way. And just meeting with your financial advisor to make sure that you are hitting those goals. If we've laid goals out, I want to have X by this time, or I want to make sure that this is done. Well, let's stay on top of that. Let's make sure that we're communicating about those and reaching all of those goals so that we know that we're ahead of the curve.
And I think this conversation is especially important for people in smaller towns. I know you've talked in the past about Butler being, a smaller town. People worked for a living. They had calluses on their hands. I grew up in rural Maine. My grandparents were farmers. They lived very simply off from Social Security when retirement did come, though I don't know that you ever fully retire from running a farm. There's always something to be done. But I think as we see, at least on the trajectory where we're at, and of course we have no idea what's coming down the pipe, but there is becoming a wider gap between the haves and the have-nots. And we are going to be more and more responsible on ensuring that retirement is something that's attainable for the working class, at least under the current trajectory. Is that fair?
Yeah, I absolutely, and again, we could sit here all day long. I don't have all the answers to what is going to fix our political system and what should be paid for and what shouldn't. And, it's, like you said, we all have a responsibility. At the end of the day, the onus is back on you to make sure that you can provide for yourself. And so we got to look at things sometimes and say, hey, all right, you know what? It's time. I got to do something. You know what I mean? Instead of waiting around for the perfect job, I'm going to get a job and do anything. And again, it gets so into the weeds with this. There's so many different things that we could talk about where or why, or do we have enough tax dollars as a country, to be able to provide these things, and what could we cut back on and everything like that. But, a big part of it comes down to, like, when you're sitting down with me, again, we're at a point now usually where I'm saying, hey, we probably aren't going to be changing too much here, right? If you haven't saved anything, there's nothing I can do for you. Right. I'm not the bad guy, right? I can't, I can only work with what I'm given. And so, I think a lot of younger people are going to be in for a rude awakening if they aren't saving and utilizing the things that they have now, and they're spending. And, that's the way that we're moving. Just everything is consumer driven. And, again, there's nothing wrong with spending money. I spend frivolously on stuff I know all the time, but doing this for a living, I also know that I don't want to be 80, trying to work, doing something that might be hard for me to do at that age. So bad things happen to good people, and we can't control everything in our lives. We do have a responsibility to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to set ourselves up. Yes, we should have this safety net. Yes, we absolutely need it. Yes, we need to provide things for the people that can't do it on their own. We as a whole need to look at it and say, hey, look, maybe I don't need this fifth pair of shoes. Right. There's another advisor who's kind of a colleague. He works out of DC, and I see him talk about all the time. And he says, if you're willing to spend $500 on a pair of shoes, you should be also willing to take that same $500 and put it into an investment account. Right. Right. Because then maybe you didn't need the shoes if you can't put that money away for yourself. You can have things, you can spend money. I'm not advocating for everybody gets one t-shirt and one pair of pants and you got to make it work. But we as a whole spend more money than we need to on things that we don't necessarily need. And so sometimes, just kind of having that conversation with yourself and saying, okay, look, do I need this? Do I really want to spend money there? Or is there a way for me to save, money by doing something differently? Right.
Well, and really it comes down to having a plan, and you get to decide which option you're going to take versus I don't have a plan. A decision will still get made for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just won't have a say.
Yes. we say this all the time when we talk to people about retirement. We want you to be in control of your retirement. We don't want external forces, the stock market, or, what the government is going to do to dictate when or how you retire. We want you to be in the driver's seat. And when you don't have a plan, then things like the stock market decline or this or whatever it is, those are going to dictate when you can and can't do something. That's not the life I want to live. That's not the life I want my clients to live. But there's only so much that we can do as people. You have to take some of it and say, okay, I want to be in control of this. I don't want, whatever external issue is going on to dictate whether or not I can retire comfortably or will I have the assets to take care of these different things. So the proper plan, and it can be simple. It can be simple. It really can be. But planning, like you said, is so important, because then and you can make a decision at a point where you say, okay, I'm going to shift and change things a little bit because I'd rather do something now and be okay later than be dealing with a problem that you had no idea was even going to be an issue. And now you're scrambling to figure it out. And you might have to make a decision that you never wanted to make because of it. So.
Right. Well, and the truth is we have no idea what will happen with Social Security or taxes or really anything down the road. But all we can do is put plans in place that give us backups on a plan A and a plan B and a plan C.
That's right.
If you have questions about how these proposed Social Security changes might impact your retirement, or you just realize you don't have a plan at all and you're ready to start one, you can schedule a complimentary call with Stephen today by visiting executivefinancialgroup.com. Again, that's executivefinancialgroup.com. You can also find them on YouTube and Facebook. And if you've got a loved one that's nearing retirement, or maybe they're worried about what's happening with Social Security, you could send them this episode and just give them a little reassurance that discussions are still being had and there are voices out there that are ready and willing to help. Again, we thank you for taking time out of your day to spend it with us and hope you'll come back again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. Alyssa, the best way to deal with those worries is to face them head on. Come and sit. I mean, a lot of the times what we find out is they aren't necessarily as bad as you thought, but your mind is a crazy thing. And if you let it run wild, then you maybe do nothing. Whenever just a little bit of action is gonna change things drastically for you. And so let's face them together, right? Everybody needs something. I can't go and cut my hair on my own. I'd come back, looking crazy. So, the same thing goes for this. Don't do it alone.
Sure.
It's not as scary. We aren't, terrible people. I'm here to help you. I really do. I want to help. That's my job, is to solve these problems for you. And so, let's face them. Let's face them together, because, we'll get through them.
It's like that childhood monster in the closet. As soon as you get up and turn on the light, it takes all the courage to turn on the light, but then you realize it's not as scary as you thought.
That's right. So again, like Alyssa said, come and see us. Come and sit down with us. We'd love to talk to you about all these things. So go to our website, give us a call.
executivefinancialgroup.com. Set up that consultation today. Thanks, guys.
The opinions expressed by Stephen Sabo and guests on this podcast are their own and do not reflect the opinions of this podcast station. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Past performance cannot be used as an indicator to determine future results. Any strategies mentioned may not be suitable for everyone. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. Before acting on any information mentioned, please consult with a qualified tax or investment advisor to determine if it is suitable for your specific situation. This program is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with regard to subject covered. Investment advisory services offered through Virtue Capital Management, LLC, VCM, a registered investment advisor. VCM and Executive Financial Group are independent of each other. Pennsylvania Insurance License number 670429. Any guarantees mentioned are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract. Stephen Sabo and/or Executive Financial Group are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency.